here this morning is faithful despite unfaithfulness. We know how Israel has constantly turned their back on God. They constantly forget how He has provided for them in situations that can only be divine. His presence, His peace, His protection. Faithful despite unfaithfulness. In the top of your lesson book this morning, you'll see, what do you see? And there's a narrative here written, and it tells us this. Dale Carnegie, who lived from 1888 to 1955, is probably the best known for his self-help book, which is entitled To Win Friends and Influence People. Carnegie authored another book in the same style. The title is How to Stop Worrying and How to Start Living. Now, that's something we should all take note. We shouldn't be worrisome. We can take note how Jesus said in Matthew 6, how to take into account the lilies of the field, the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap, that God provides. So why do we worry? And in this brief inclusion of the book, he provoked with a provoking illustration that David Carnegie gives. He says, 2 men looked out from prison bars and saw the mud. Either saw the mud, on the other side, the other saw stars. 2 individuals can be the same challenging, perhaps even desperate situation, and see things quite differently. If I'm put in a situation, I may see it differently than you see it. It's all how you perceive certain situations really can determine the outcome of your attitude, how to handle it. The children of Israel were faced with the challenge of conquering the promised land. 2 outlooks emerged, however. Whether this feat was possible, this was not a matter of mud versus stars in a sense. It was a matter of unbelief versus faith. Now, how many times in moments of your life do you face unbelief, moments where your faith is tested? Do you trust God during those moments? Or do you begin to doubt? Israel began to doubt. They began to go back to their woe is me attitudes. So number one, we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility, number one. The Lord's command. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying in verse 1 and 2 of Numbers chapter 13, verses 1 and 2, saying, Send men to spy the land of Canaan I am giving to the children of Israel. From each tribe of their fathers you shall send a man, every one a leader among them. Now, at this point in the Scriptures, we're about to continue in a series of God being faithful. We've seen in our previous series how God is always faithful. He's always there, and He will follow through with what He says He will follow through with. If He says it, you can take it to the bank. It's going to happen. You can rest assured it's a solid foundation. You can build good, solid hope and trust and faith on that foundation. Because God says it's going to happen. So you can take it to the bank. It's going to happen. Despite all of God's faithfulness throughout Israel's history, we see all Israel does is begin to whine, they're crying, they're moping around, doubtless faith. We see them questioning God, questioning Moses. Why have you brought us out of Egypt here to die? Throughout all Israel's history, we see that Israel was a moping, crying nation for most part. But we're about to see a huge turning point in history as we know it at this point in the moment. A huge turning point is about to take place. This is a land that they were promised was a gift from God. And there is great emphasis throughout the history of Israel on this. And as we're about to see, the people themselves have done nothing to deserve this great gift. They've done nothing to deserve what God's going to give them. They've done nothing to earn it. But God's going to give it to them. Why? He's provided for them in many ways. It has nothing that's done that they gained by merit. It's not something that God has owed to them. God doesn't owe them this land. He's going to give it to them. God is a faithful God. Even though the people of Israel are so undeserving, they don't deserve any of this that God's going to give them, God's going to give it to them out of the abundance of His grace. Abundance of His grace. And we don't deserve His grace either, but He gives it to us daily. And we need it. We don't deserve it. I don't have to look far back in my history and say, hey, I don't deserve what God's done for me. I don't look that far back in my life and say, I don't deserve what you've given me, Lord. God does have His grace and His mercy. And because He loves us. And as we're about to see here, Israel is going to receive a portion of grace as well, or the provisions that God has blessed them with. So they must, however, to receive the grace just like us, they must abide and follow by His rules, His standards, what He's laid down for them to do. They must be obedient. We're no different. We are no different either at all. God is very specific in the plans He's laid out for us. There's not any question of what He tells us to do. It's not one of those things that, you really mean you got to do that, Lord? Or did you mean this? There's no question. It's very plain and simple, and it's to the point what we're to do, what God's commands are for us in our life. There's no doubt in what He's laid down for us. There's no doubting the plan that He has given us and the Scriptures to follow and abide by. And before we can receive the provisions of His amazing grace and enter the promised land that's been given to us, we have to be obedient and faithful and endure. So verse 2b, from each tribe their fathers, shall send a man, from everyone a leader among them. Okay, this plan to send out the spies to the land was not originally Moses' idea. This wasn't something that Moses just conjured up here during the deliverance of Israel. It didn't come from God. However, this plan came from the people. Okay, we're going to kind of hit on that and see how it comes from the people. How the people come to this plan. Moses simply told the people, go and take the land. He says, hey, here's the land, there it is, you're going to go take it. You're going to go take it. But the people of Israel, being the people they are, were very fearful. They were very doubtful. And made the suggestion to Moses to send out spies. Hey, we want you to go check out the land. We want you to go see what's there. We don't know what's there. We just come from 400 years of bondage in Egypt. We want you to go check this land out and see what's there. Now, why do you think that is? Why do you think Israel has this doubt and question? Why do you think they doubted? Perhaps they were filled with fear. They didn't know what was there. They didn't know what kind of place they were going into. They were filled with fear. Or do you simply think that perhaps they had begun to lose their faith? They began to doubt God again. They began to doubt because they've already forgotten what miraculous things God's already done for them in the past. So they began to doubt that God is with them as He's been the whole time. Do you think that's what it was? Very well possible. Whatever it may be, they wanted spies sent out to the land. They wanted Moses to send out spies to check the land out before they go into it. This plan in and of itself will end poorly, however. It'll end poorly as he listens to the suggestion of the people and he heeds their words. Okay, well, we'll send out people. We'll send out spies just to please you all. Check it out. Perhaps the accusations of Moses and Aaron were pretty false because the people began to cast out threats and stuff against him. It's pretty false, self-interested as they were. They had Moses and Aaron hesitant to take a strong leadership. Since the people of Israel initiated the excursion, perhaps Moses only came to ask him how to send the spies out. Not if he should. He didn't take it because, hey, is this what you want me to do? No. He didn't question that, whether he should send the spies out. From each tribe of their fathers you shall send out a man, everyone a leader among the scribes, describes the method of sending out the spies. And according to the command of the Lord, nevertheless, this was a plan of God. God used it, and He used the report of the spies to test Israel's faith. Now, do you think Israel's going to get in trouble here? He's going to test their faith. You think they're going to kind of get a little bit of trouble? We'll see. I think so. We can note that Moses speaks of this event later when he speaks to the next generation of the Israelites as well. He recalls this event and he presents it to them. And he will say and he will tell that the Israelites came to him suggesting to send out the people to spy out the land or to scope it out. It's more than likely that the people offer a proposal and then God gives the approval, more or less. He's going to approve that. So, all right then, if you doubt me, I'll let you do it, but I want to test you through all this. I want to see where your heart really lies, and I want to test your faith. I want to challenge you during this moment. One being from each tribe means he would send out 12 men. The 12 tribes, remember? He's going to send out 12 men to scope out the land. And he chooses 12 for this task of checking it out. So be Moses' counsel. Okay, verses 17 and 18. Verse 17. Then Moses said to them, spy the land of Canaan. He said to them, go up this way into the south and go up into the mountains. Okay, we're going to go to a map here. I want you to look at the map. Now we can see that Moses sends the spies north. He's going to send them north to Kadesh and Barnea, which is about right there. He's going to send them north. Now they've already come through all this. All Egypt, all the desert stuff. Now he's going to send them north from right here to go up to here. Okay? He's going to send them north to go and check it out. And it is here where the people currently camped out. And the spies are told to check out the place called the Negev Desert. The Negev Desert. I'm trying to find it there. I don't see it. There it is. Right there. He's going to have them check it out. Check out that desert. Go and look at it, see what's there. And it is here in this south of this area that the people will dwell. They will be there. And the land that makes up, which is what we now call the land that's possessed by Israel. Moses will also tell the 12 men here that he sends out at this point that are spying the land to go into the hilly country, which will lead as the end result of checking out the whole country. That means he's going to check it all out. He's not going to check out one area. He's going to spy out the whole land. He's going to check it out. So, verse 18. And see what is there. And see what is there. Verse 18. And see what is the land is like, whether the people who dwell in it, whether they're strong, they're weak, they're many, or they're few. Now, what do you think the result's going to be when they come back? Moses' direction to the spies here was a very subtle manifestation of unbelief. We don't know what's there. We don't know how you're going to provide, God. We want some assurance of our own, which they really had already had all the assurance they need that God is with them. He delivered them from the 400 years of bondage by through crossing the desert, crossing the Red Sea. They've already forgotten about all those provisions, the food and stuff they were given. They've forgotten it all. It didn't take too long for them to forget. Do you think Moses really doubted that the land was good? Did he doubt that the land was rich? Did he doubt that there were useful forests there? Did it matter? Did it really matter? God told them, hey, you're going to take this land, so did it matter what was there? If God says, hey, you're going to go here and you're going to take it, so does it really matter what's there? Did it matter if the people were strong or many? They lived in the strongholds? One thing I would like to note here is this was an entirely normal reaction. It was an entirely normal reaction and a response here. After all, we have to remember that this land here, however, that they were going into was a brand new land. It was new to them. It was new, so they wanted to check it out. They had never been there before. They didn't know what to expect when they got there. They didn't know if they would be attacked. They didn't know what the land held and what kind of provisions the land would have. They didn't know. They had no idea. So it was a normal response. It's like what you and I would do. Of course, before you go buy a vehicle, let's say, you can just go straight to the lot and say, yep, that one right there, just right out of the blue. No, you do your research. You check out the vehicle. You see what kind of ratings it's got or whatever for your insurance. What kind of safety rating it's got for your own health. So this is kind of what Israel was doing. Even though it was done out of doubt and lack of faith. This is what they were doing. They were there to check out the terrain. They observed the people. They were there whether they're strong or weak, whether it's fortified, whether it's heavily guarded. There was a lot of unknowns that laid ahead for Israel at this moment. They didn't know. They had no idea what was going to take place. However, even though God allowed their lack of faith and lack of trust in Him to take place, it would have been better if they had just trusted God and His provisions and listened to what He said rather than saying, hey, we want to make sure, yeah, we know you said this, God, but we want to check it and make sure you're right. It'd been better if they just trusted Him to begin with. Amen. Instead, they allowed doubt to flood and fill their hearts. They allowed doubt to take in and sink in their hearts. And after all, we've seen already how they've been a very doubting people, a very complaining people. Everywhere they turned, they were complaining about something. And I talked to Dean this morning about it. I said, you know, Moses had to be a real patient man. I couldn't have done it. I don't think I could have done it. I'd have been I'd have blew, like the old saying, I'd have blew my top. I'd had a come loose. I couldn't have done what Moses done, I don't think. But God was with Moses. And Moses was a very patient man. He was very patient. He had to be. Because all they done was complain against him. They complained against him all the time, or on every turn, they were constantly complaining against him. Their complaining was a constant reaction for the people of Israel. Nothing was ever good enough. However, I got a question. Are we so different? Are we so different? No. We're not. We're not contented. We're not content with what we've got. We neglect to trust God when He says, hey, it's going to be okay. We neglect to take and trust God in our daily walk, how He's provided, how He's proved Himself in all of our life, throughout all history, as a matter of fact. How God has proven Himself to be faithful. Over and over. Yet we still allow the unknown to flood our lives, or to flood our thoughts, to flood our hearts with fear, and fill our lives with doubt, followed by faithless reactions. That's what we do. Shame on us. He even tells us, these spies, what they bring back from the land, so the people can be given to them and kind of reaffirm their faith. Number 2, the report. The report. A, the produce of the land, verse 25. And they returned from spying the land after 40 days. Now 40 days, we're never told how long the spies would be gone. We're never told how long they would be gone. However, Moses wasn't given that information. He just said, hey, send them out. He didn't know how long they were gone, but they'd be gone 40 days, 5 years, 10 years. He didn't know. They had no idea how long they'd be gone, how long it would take them to return with the report. Now, if you'd like to know, the spies were gone for 40 days. And this is a very common time. However, throughout the Scriptures, 40 is. It's a very popular number that God uses quite regularly in the Scriptures, the number 40. This is a common time period that God used to test His people. And given the territory the spies had covered from Kadesh, Carnate to Lebo-Hamath, which is approximately 250 miles. So given the 40 days, it's a very reasonable number for the spies to accomplish what they set out to do. We also see this was also the time of the years, the number of years, including the years before the mission had taken place. So that was 40 years that was given for the generation to pass away for those who would turn away from God's commands in Numbers 14:34. God uses 40 pretty regularly. So in verse 26, given their report, we see this. Verse 26. Now they departed and came back to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of Israel in the wilderness of Paran and Kadesh. They brought back word with them to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. They also gave a report or display a sample of the fruits they collected there. You're going to see some amazing things. A sample of a giant cluster of grapes that was so large that it required 2 people to carry it on a pole. Wow. How amazing. I'm sure their initial response was an amazement. They seen this big, huge cluster of grapes that was there waiting on them. But God's given them the provisions that's there just waiting. Could you imagine a cluster of grapes that would take 2 people, that was so massive, it would take 2 people to carry on a staff? I couldn't imagine that. Of course, the people were amazed, especially if you take into account they've just spent all this time in the desert with very little, if anything at all, grew. So to see this big, huge pod of grapes, no doubt was an amazing thing to their eyes. Without a doubt, it's affirmation that the people wanted to hear and see how God would provide. It's what they wanted to see, what they wanted to hear. Everything that God had said about the land was affirmed. Now, is that a shocker? No. But they doubted. They doubted. It was affirmed, it was true, and the phrase that flows with milk and honey that God's talked about the land signifies the abundant provisions that was there waiting on the people of Israel. That's what the phrase, when it flows with milk and honey, what God is referring to. Hey, there's an abundance of provisions there just waiting on you all. It's there for your taking. Given the visual evidence, the place of God's provisions were no exaggeration of all. It was not exaggerated at all. In fact, it was affirmed. And if anything, it was an understatement of the provisions that were in the land that God was giving them. It wasn't exaggerated. It was very understated. In fact, in all human perspective, in all humans' terms, it was a huge understatement of the provisions that God would give the people. So we have the people of the land, verse 28. Here's the problem. Here's the hiccup that they're about to hit on. Verse 28, nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. They're massive. Verse 28 says, nevertheless, people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. Now, from what we have gathered about the land, it's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's lush. The crops there are very massive in size, very well and pleasing to the eye. Also be pleasing for the nourishment they needed. Filled with lush crops, fruits. The land was definitely one that was to be desired. However, there were some people already living there. And another matter which was another matter altogether, the people were already there living. We find they were strong, they were powerful. Their city, and that was very large in number. It was very fortified, heavily guarded, if you will. It was heavily defended. These were the descendants of Anak, or the Anakites. People of the group well known, being exceptionally strong and tall. You think this spirit is Israel? Absolutely. Why? Because they allowed doubt to start setting in again. They allowed doubt to start setting in. They began to doubt. Oh, we can't do it. We can't take that. We can't do that. Look how big those guys are. And I often think when they talk about large in number and size, they're very big. And when the Scripture talks about being massive and strong, especially in the Old Testament, the first person I think about is Goliath. I can't help it. He was very massive in size, and he was very strong. But we've seen that God took a shepherd boy and defeated a giant. Defeated a giant. It is here without a doubt that people the spies did not believe the land could be taken. The ones they sent out said, hey, we can't take that land. There's some big people there, and they're strong, and the city's heavily guarded. We can't take that land. These are the very people that Caleb and one of the spies would drive out of Hebron 40 years later so he can possess a portion of the promised land in Joshua chapter 15, 13. And in the account of Numbers 13:22, it tells us that 3 sons of Anak are there. Caleb will defeat in Joshua 15:14. Numbers 13:30, Caleb responds to the claims about these giants of Canaan with the utmost faith that God is able to defeat them. And without a doubt, the Israelites should have known this. God had already wiped out the vast army of Egypt that was pursuing them. He led them in the desert in the day and night. He provided with them with food on the ground that they didn't have to work for other than going out and scraping it up. They provided with manna that was given to them. Yet they began to doubt that this land could be taken. They began to doubt. Although Caleb finds himself in the minority, it is only he and Joshua we find that are confident that God will take care of them. That God will come out victorious over this and deliver them the land. It's only 2. So 2 out of 10, 2 out of 12 spies are confident. The other 10 say, nope, it can't be taken. We can't do it. And they're right, they can't do it, but God can. God can. We must keep in mind that God is always faithful no matter the circumstances, how large they are that we face. God will take care of us. God will provide. There's an article here that says by Tosin. At the end of 2017, near investors were asking 2 questions. Should I invest in Biotosin? What is Bytosin? The name suggests that Bytosin is a type of currency. Unlike the others, worldwide currency without a central bank or a single administrator, instead operates a computer coding and verifies the transactions and prevents counterfeiting. The value of Bytosin fluctuates widely in 2011. The value of Bytosin rose from about 30 cents to about $32, then fell to $2. On December the 12th, 2017, the single Bytosin was valued at $17,749 before plummeting yet again. The volatility of Bytosin can cause a speculator to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in a very short time. All investors struggle to balance the risk and reward. The Israelites on the way to Canaan didn't know whether the risk of an investment was worth it in Canaan, but Joshua and Caleb knew, unlike Bytosin, the promise of God came with a guarantee. There was no doubt. If God said it, it was going to happen. Joshua and Caleb knew this. The others doubted. So 3, the response. Numbers 14, verses 1 through 2. The response. A, cries of anguish. Verse 1. All the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. The children of Israel were confronted with 2 reports regarding the promised land. 2 of the 12 spies, Joshua and Caleb, say, let us go up at once and take possession. They wanted to go right then because they knew they could do it, that God was with them. They wanted to go immediately. Hey, let's go right now and take possession of it. It's just they're waiting on us. We have to have faith that God can do it. So let's go right now. They wanted to go once, right then, and overcome it. But the other 10 spies said this, what God promised about the land is true. Nevertheless, the natives of the land are too mighty, and we cannot overcome them despite what God has promised, is what the other 10 were saying. It doesn't matter what they said. It don't matter what Joshua and Caleb telling you. I'm telling you they're big, and I don't care what any God says, we can't do it. Oh, without the power of God. It doesn't take long before the negative outlook of the 10 spies begins to dampen the enthusiasm of the whole tribe of Israel. It begins to dampen their enthusiasm. It begins to dampen them and cause doubt and fear to flood their minds yet again. It begins to fill their hearts. You know, have you ever noticed how you can take someone who is very negative, that one person that is very negative in every outlook, no matter what you say, oh, it's a beautiful day out today, oh, it's prettier yesterday. Oh, I got a good report from the doctor. Oh, I did too, but you shouldn't be suffering that. Oh, look at this wonderful thing that I've got. Oh, yeah, but look at all this other stuff you got knocking at your door. Very negative. How you can take the outlook of one negative person and put them in a room filled with a lot of optimistic people. And before long, that one negative outlook from that one person will spread throughout the whole group of the others. That's what happens here. It's like a spark that hits a dry field. It starts out with that tiny spark here, yeah. Just a spark. It starts out with that little spark. Before long, the whole field is engulfed. And that's how the negativity can influence the whole crowd, the whole congregation of people. Have you ever noticed that when you're happy, it doesn't take long for the negative attitude of others to have an effect on your attitude as well? It don't take long. If you're around it enough, it doesn't take long to become negative yourself. No matter how happy or how grateful you were, before long, if you're around constant negativity, it will drag you down. The cries of the 10 spies are heard throughout the entire camp, like the fire that infiltrated the whole camp or the whole forest started at one spark. These cities, the 10, heard throughout the cries of the spies of the 10, was heard throughout the whole camp. And it's here once again the record begins playing over and over again when the Israelites begin to cry, moan, and grumble against Moses and his brother yet again. It's here that we see it. Moses and Aaron hear the weeping and crying of the people, moaning again. Verse 2. And all the children of Israel complained. Shocker. Because this has been a constant thing for Israel, complaining. They complained against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, if we'd only died in Egypt, or if we'd only died in the wilderness. Now, we heard that before? Absolutely. Oh, life was so much better when we were in bondage. At least we had food and meat in our pockets. We've heard it before. This is like the broken record that keeps playing over and over again throughout Israel's history. And we are no different. We are no different. The murmuring directed first toward Moses and Aaron, but since these were the Lord's commands, you know where it was really directed? To him. The Lord told them what to do, but they began to whine and complain against Moses and Aaron. So instead of complaining against Moses and Aaron, their complaints were really going up before God. It was actually directed toward him. The vision of Moses and Aaron led these people to the promised land. The Lord's vision, their complaint against the Lord, even if they wanted to hide it by directing it to Moses and Aaron, would still come up before God. God knew where their hearts were at. He knows where your hearts are at when you're complaining, and you're moping, and you're whining and crying. He knows where your true intent's at. He's not stupid. You could probably hear some possibly spiritual folks among the murmurers saying, oh no, we trust in the Lord. We love the Lord. We love our God. We would never rebel against the Lord, but filled with nothing but sarcasm. And it's Moses and Aaron we don't like. We know where their hearts lie at. Only Joshua and Caleb of the 12 did not rebel against the Lord. They had faith, they had trust in Him, and without a doubt they remembered what God had already promised that would happen, would take place, and what would be accomplished for them. We had seen the miraculous deliverance of His power already. They'd seen the wondrous provisions in the wilderness, and He had already blessed them with. So they were faithful, and they knew that God was able to perform this wonderful miracle of delivering this land over to them. The Israelites began to complain once again, only if we had died in Egypt and in the wilderness. Once again, we can clearly see a repeat pattern taking place here among the people of Israel. They voiced their wish that God had taken their lives. Now this is quite sobering, considering how the nation has already forgotten how God has worked before their very eyes already. How He delivered them, how He provided for them in miraculous ways. Yet in their mind they seem to have pushed all that aside, put it off to a very distant memory of how God's already taken care of them. And with His marvelous works and signs in Egypt, through the desert, and then the claim that God just brought them here to the promised land to die is nothing short than blasphemy of itself. How many times do we, maybe not the same fashion, but say the same thing? God, you said you provide for them, but I don't see this test result getting any better. God, you said you provide for them, but you know what? My checking account's in the negative. I've got kids at home I need to feed. God, you said you provide for me. It's nothing short of blasphemy. With His marvelous works and the signs in Egypt, He delivered Israel. And He brought them to this promised land, not to abandon them, but to provide once again. So be the concerned leaders, verse 5. Verse 5. Then Aaron and Moses fell on their faces before the assembly of the Lord and the congregation of Israel. Numbers 14:4. They proposed mutiny against the leadership of Moses. They began to try to have mutiny against him. And here, as we covered last week, it is here that we find Moses and Aaron, probably in a sense of gravity in the situation, to fall down. And perhaps it reflects a sense of emotions, of fear of the Lord. And that it's possible outpouring of vengeance. So they hit the ground and prostrate, boom, right on the ground, face down. And it could have been out of fear. Oh no, he's going to wipe them out now for this blasphemous accusation. Or perhaps it's here it's a sense of emotions, fear of the Lord, outpouring of His wrath on the people because of their lack of faith. Some would suggest they began what seems to be an outright defiance toward God right here at this moment. people are to simply prostrate themselves in prayer. Could have been what happened. Not a word of people knowing it would do no good, but they knew they must cry before the Lord for a miracle to take place so they would be spared. So we see courageous leaders, verses 6 through 9. It says this: But Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied the land, tore their clothes. Joshua and Caleb were two faithful spies. They were very faithful and are younger and more optimistic. They attempt to persuade the people. They begin to say, hey, no, we're not going to do this. They tore their clothes, showing utter grief, utter mourning, and acting as someone had died or was about to die. Joshua and Caleb expressed their anguish toward the people and doing their decision of attempt to turning against Moses and Aaron. And however their anguish toward the people is more important, their rebellion towards God Himself is what the people were doing. Although they were very distraught with the people, with the way they were dealing with Moses and Aaron, they were very distraught over how they were dealing with God. The land is exceedingly good land. They reminded the people of the fullness of God's promise. He promised the land would be good. They saw it with their own eyes. If God promised they could take the possession of it, they could have the assurance that it would happen. Verse 8. The Lord delights in us. He will bring us the land and give it to us, which flows with milk and honey. And it is here that Joshua and Caleb highlight the most important factor in overtaking the land. The Lord has not brought the Israelites this far just to turn against them and let them die. As they have stated. He is pleased. And He has made His covenant with them. And He shows His favor in repeated occasions. And He will lead them to this land and He will give it to them. He'll provide it for them. It is also here that we can note that Joshua and Caleb made an appeal to the will of the people, asking them to repent from their act of rebellion and turning against Moses and Aaron. Also to turn their lack of faith into faith that God will provide. They plead with the Israelites to give up their fears, their anger, their anguish, their lack of faith, and to repent to the Lord and trust in His mighty power once again. They can trust in Him, and they can be assured that He will follow through with what He said He would do, as can we. Verse 9, Only do not rebel against the Lord, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread, and their protection is departed from them. And the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. Don't fear them. Don't be afraid. God's with us. We have the Lord of Israel, the Lord God Jehovah. The God of Abraham is with us. Joshua and Caleb are basically saying that these inhabitants of the promised land were nothing compared to how big God is, how powerful God is. They may be powerful and large in number and size and strength, but they are nothing, and God can handle it. The power of the might, power and might means nothing to God. It's useless in the might and the power that God has. So D, cries of anger, verse 10. Verse 10. And all the congregation said to stone them with stones. This is the response of the people. Rebellious, carnal, not to endure, not to act as men of faith who came. They would kill Joshua and Caleb for calling them out and calling them to forsake their unbelief and trust to God. Nothing can be more vexing or more aggravating than a child of God in rebellion to God Himself. A child who is full of faith and submission to God, who has godly counsel, pleases God. Mutiny. In 1610, British navigator Henry Hudson and the crew of the ship Discovery ventured into modern-day Canada, trying to find the Northwest Passage from Europe to Asia. The voyagers succeeded in locating this large bay, later named the Hudson Bay. Discovery became lodged in ice forcing voyagers to spend a winter ashore with very limited provisions. The crew's morale eroded. Starving and desperate for home, many of the crew convinced themselves that Hudson was hoarding food. By the time the ice had cleared and the men had refused to continue searching for the passage, instead of revolting, and the commandeer of the ship abandoned Hudson and his son and 7 others. A later expedition looking for Hudson found a small shelter that they may have built. Their bodies were never recovered. Some mutinies are justifiable and against Henry Hudson, and have been one of such, but mutinies in a Christian context are especially fraught with danger, lest we discover too late that we are just opposing God Himself. Some Bible print the words of Christ in red so that they can stand out to the reader, so they can stick out to the reader himself. Perhaps today's lesson, the whole text should be printed in yellow as a cautionary signal. The Israelites rebelled against God over and over again, time after time, doubting, losing their faith that God would provide over and over again. They refused to trust in the appointed leaders that God appointed that would lead them to the promised land. When Paul recounts the examples of the Israelites' disobedience, he emphasizes that these incidents were not just ancient history. He notes and says that these things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us. 1 Corinthians 10:11. We can easily read an account like today's lesson and shake our heads and wonder how the Israelites have forgotten God's provisions altogether. How they've forgotten His with them altogether. We can easily lose sight of that. But what we need to remember is this. Instead of becoming prideful and asking these questions as we've studied in today's text, today's lesson, in this whole account, it should do nothing less than to humble us ourselves. You got to think too that people of Israel didn't have written texts as we've got to study by. You have to take into account that we do. We've seen how God provided for them. Yet we still doubt. We begin to lose faith. Therefore, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. There's a lot we can learn from these negative remarks of Israel: lack of faith, lack of obedience. The list can keep going. However, we should not treat their failures lightly. We should not take it lightly. We should press toward the goal, that blessed promised land that the Lord has prepared for us. And remember, in the midst of the most unfaithful moments of life, in the midst of trials and tribulations, that God remains faithful. He will see to it that we can endure it. We just have to place our hope and trust in Him.